Stop right now if you're planning a subnet with exactly 16 IP addresses for 16 resources, because Azure is about to steal 5 of them and your deployment will fail spectacularly.
Wait, Azure just takes IP addresses without asking? That sounds like a bug.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Network Ninja Cloudcast. I'm your host, and today we're diving into one of the most common subnet sizing mistakes I see in Azure deployments.
Hey everyone, I'm excited about this one because I literally made this mistake last week.
Perfect timing then. So tell me what happened with your subnet.
I created a /28 subnet, which should give me 16 IP addresses according to basic CIDR math. I tried to deploy 14 virtual machines, thinking I had room to spare, and Azure told me I didn't have enough addresses. I was so confused.
This is exactly why I wanted to cover this topic. Azure reserves 5 IP addresses in every single subnet, and this catches people constantly. Let me break down exactly which addresses Azure takes and why.
5 addresses? That's a significant chunk, especially in smaller subnets.
Exactly. Let's use a concrete example. Say you create a subnet with the CIDR block 10.0.1.0 out of 28. That gives you addresses from 10.0.1.0 through 10.0.1.15. Azure reserves the first 4 and the last one. So 10.0.1.0 is reserved as the network address, which is standard networking. 10.0.1.1 is reserved for the default gateway. 10.0.1.2 and 10.0.1.3 are reserved for Azure DNS mapping. And 10.0.1.15, the broadcast address, is also reserved.
Okay, so the network and broadcast addresses make sense from traditional networking. But why does Azure need 2 addresses for DNS?
Great question. Azure maps the Azure DNS IP addresses to the virtual network space for each subnet. This ensures DNS resolution works seamlessly within your VNet. Microsoft documents this in their official Azure Virtual Network FAQ, and it's been this way since the service launched.
So in my /28 subnet with 16 total addresses, I actually only had 11 usable addresses for my VMs, not 16.
Exactly right. The formula is simple. Take your total addresses from the CIDR block and subtract 5. For a /28, that's 16 minus 5, giving you 11 usable. For a /27, that's 32 minus 5, giving you 27 usable. For a /24, that's 256 minus 5, giving you 251 usable.
That makes the math easy. But here's what I'm wondering. Does this apply to every subnet type? What about gateway subnets or Azure firewall subnets?
The 5-address reservation applies to all subnets, but some Azure services have additional requirements. A gateway subnet for VPN or ExpressRoute needs at least a /27, which Microsoft recommends for future scalability. Azure Firewall requires a subnet named Azure Firewall Subnet with at least a /26, giving you 59 usable addresses after the 5-address reservation.
Let me make sure I understand this with an analogy. It's like renting an apartment building where the landlord keeps the first 4 units and the last unit for building management, maintenance, and utilities. You can only rent out the units in between.
That's a solid analogy, and it holds up technically. The reserved addresses serve infrastructure purposes just like those building management units. The network address identifies the subnet itself. The gateway routes traffic, DNS handles name resolution, and the broadcast address is reserved even though Azure doesn't use traditional broadcast.
What's the biggest mistake you see people make with this?
The number one mistake is planning subnet sizes based on current needs without accounting for the reservation or growth. Someone needs 10 IP addresses, creates a /28 thinking they have 6 to spare, and then can't scale when they need 12 resources. Always plan for at least 50% growth and remember the 5 address tax.
What about platform services like Azure Kubernetes Service or App Service environments? Do they have special requirements?
Absolutely. AKS with Azure CNI networking needs IP addresses for every pod, not just every node. If you have 10 nodes running 30 pods each, you need 300 plus IP addresses in that subnet. App service environments need at least a /24 for proper operation. Azure SQL Managed Instance requires a dedicated subnet with at least a /27. Always check the specific service documentation before sizing.
So let me recap what I learned. Azure reserves 5 IP addresses in every subnet: the network address, the default gateway, 2 for DNS mapping, and the broadcast address. My usable addresses equal total addresses minus 5. And specific services like AKS, OSA, and SQL Managed Instance have their own additional subnet requirements.
Perfect summary. My pro tip, when in doubt, go one CIDR size larger than you think you need. The cost difference is zero since you're not charged for address space, but the flexibility is invaluable.
That's such a simple rule to remember.
That's it for today's episode. If this saved you from a subnet sizing headache, hit that like button and subscribe for more Azure networking deep dives.
And share this with your team before they make the same mistake I did.
Thanks for watching the Network Ninja Cloudcast. See you in the next one.